There are many forms of goddess. That's the beauty of it. We celebrate that multiplicity, and there is something for every kind of mind here. So it's not linear. Yes. So that is the beauty of it, of this land, of this civilization. Because you can believe in God, even if you don't believe, it's fine. You're accepted.
Everywhere you turned, every person you spoke to here had this incredible energy or thread within them that to me made them such a big teacher to me. I was like, this is not one or two or three or four or five or six gurus here. There is many. The way of life in the Hinduism, that internal sanatdharma, how it is so lived in just every person, whether they're in a temple or have a certain god or goddess that they go to. But the philosophy, the way of life is just so rich.
In India, the framework of spirituality is very different. It begins with participation, and Kumbh Mela is that fantastic example. Thank you for coming to this wonderful session. A very good afternoon to you all. To begin with, I would like to ask Rachel. Rachel, what drew your heart to India? And how did it change your perception of life?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be in this space with you, and also for greatly what India shares with the world as well. Back in 2014, I was doing a TV show that went around the world looking at beauty and culture. And of course, we were going to come to India. And I said to my sister, I said, part of it was also, the concept was also looking at the spiritual aspect of some of these countries. And I called my sister and I said, Jackie, I need a guru in India. Do you know one? Because she had been exploring in that area. As well as, I just want to say also, my mother also exposed us to many different types of religions growing up, many different philosophies. And she had just been to a meeting with Sadhguru at the time. So to cut a long story short, I ended up coming here in 2015 and traveling to do this TV show. When I arrived in India, I was extremely excited. And India hadn't been on my radar at that point. But there was something when we were going to do the TV show that excited me. And so when I landed in Delhi, literally it brings tears to my eyes even to this day. I walked out of the airport and I just inhaled. And every time I fly into Delhi airport, I take that moment to reignite that sensory action of discovery for me, because that smell, it was a collision of everything, of excitement, of unknown. The next day I was to fly to Kashi, to Varanasi. So this was my first entry point into India, was one of your most beautiful cities, which was Kashi. And it wasn't until 2 years later that I actually understood why this matrix had started happening within my own self, because of that city of life and death, of impermanence, what that would mean. And I'll never forget, because I felt intruded. My perception of death, of seeing cremation, was that of a Westerner. It was hidden. But 2 years after I had come into Kashi, my grandmother died, and a year later my mother died. The only way I knew to heal this was fly here to your country, because there was these tools, this openness, that I felt safe. And before she passed, I asked her, I said, Mum, what do you regret? It was very, very fast. What do you regret not doing in your life? And she said, I regret not being fully who I am. I was always worried about what other people thought. And when she passed away, it was within 4 months that I Googled some training in Rishikesh. Varanasi Kashi was such a monumental part of my matrix of my life. And all I can say is the bravery of making these choices to change your life and your path are so important, but you have to be brave.
You know what, Rachel? Your story has many layers of spirituality to that. And I'll tell you why. As an insider being in this country, I see Bharat as a yantra. It's a conscious field where the moment you enter the space, it quietly reorganizes you, isn't it? See, a lot of people have come over the centuries seeking for various things, from spices to spirituality, for enlightenment, for healing, for many things, for answers, seeking answers, and most of them invariably have left with deeper questions, isn't it? So there is something about this land that transforms you. And why does that transform you? It's probably because this entire civilization becomes a guru. So you don't need instructions in this land to transform. Just being here in this yantra called Bharat itself is transformational. So it creates a condition wherein that's possible. So, because life itself becomes pedagogy here. So consciousness needn't have to be studied, but it is a living experience. So if I look at Bharat as, and yoga and Ayurveda for that matter, as an inheritance, I don't just consider it to be a privilege to be born here, but I feel it's a huge responsibility. Because, see, like you rightly said, people come here with an intention to heal, and most often there will be some kind of loss. That loss might be of a loved one, loss of health, emotional health, mental stability, a lot of things. But there is a loss, there is an aspect of loss. So there is that intention awakens within you only when there is a loss. And of course, here when people come in India also, there is an intention. When they come, probably in today's world, they come to the mat with an intention to heal with some or the other ailment. But however, what they don't understand is, they say, oh, I want to practice yoga, I want to do yoga, that's what they say. But what they don't realize is, once you're born in this land, you've already started practicing yoga. Because, see, as children, we see a lamp being lit at sunset, or sitting cross-legged while having food, or even, for that matter, just hearing or chanting mantras much before we have understood the meaning of it, or even just leaving footwear outside before entering some spaces. All this is still yoga. Why? Because it works on our attention, our awareness, our rhythm, and embodiment. So it works on our nervous system, and it creates that condition for transformation. So all this living here is a preparation to what Maharshi Patanjali calls now. Atha. In the very first sutra, he says Atha Yoganushasanam. So what is that Atha? Atha means that now the discipline of yoga begins, which means that there is some amount of preparation that has already been done, and now let's start with Raja Yoga, or the eightfold path that he mentions. So you don't begin yoga at level 0, you begin yoga at level 1, and that level 1 is now. And for you, it was that moment of loss. So, and lot of people have come at the doorstep of yoga with that. And talking about Varanasi, see, I feel that you being in Varanasi was not random. Not at all, isn't it? Because everything is planned in life. Yes. Every single aspect of our life. Because Varanasi is that field of consciousness wherein for generations together, humans have longed for liberation in that land. For countless generations, they have just lived there with one single intention: to awaken. Yeah. And how powerful is that? Imagine in an entire city where there is life and death coexisting. So along with those countless people, there have been masters like Adi Shankaracharya, Gautama Buddha, Sant Kabir Das, Tulsi Das Ji, Lahari Mahashay, Trailang Swami. All of them have, walked that land. So it is not just another land. And along with them, there have been countless sadhus, countless sadhakas, pilgrims, widows, seekers, scholars, all of whom have done prayers with devotion, done their austerities. And that entire condensed form of energy is there in Varanasi. So it's a living conscious field. And once you enter there, how can you not be transformed? Isn't it? So that's precisely, probably when you saw, you mentioned about seeing death and bodies being cremated in Varanasi. See, the greatest teaching in Varanasi is that death is something not to be feared. And no other city teaches you that. It is called Mahasmashan, the greatest cremation ground, because not just because of death, but it actually, in a way instigates us to think about all those illusions that need death within us. In fact, in Varanasi, it's believed that Mahadev himself comes and utters the Taraka mantra in the ears of the departing soul, which means that that higher consciousness wants that departing soul to hear the Taraka mantra. Taraka mantra is the mantra for liberation, or the mantra that can carry us across the ocean of samsara. So if Mahadev himself comes and utters that Taraka mantra in our ears, he wants us to go beyond that ocean of samsara and find that truth within. And tell me one place on this planet other than Varanasi where that can happen. And you have entered India through Varanasi. All the places.
It was extraordinary because at the first time I was there, I was interviewing a quantum physicist, and he had come there to die, and I couldn't understand that concept at all. And it wasn't until obviously I had gone down to the guts and witnessed this, and over time, after repeatedly visiting there over and over again, because I mean, you establish stories associated with death, or oh my God, that's just so, there's drama. Like you see a dead body, it's like, you know, you see the whole process is so sacred and so intoxicating in many, many ways. And so it becomes sometimes a big story, especially in I can, you know, Western head and then that starts dissolving, and you start seeing the concept of obviously the liberation, the moksha, the rituals, and even when I was standing aside as obviously the bodies come down past, and seeing them, the cloth, and bhagavad in orange, the incense, the cows, everything just became so intoxicating, so reverent, so devotional. The chanting at the gut, it truly made the whole experience unravel, and less of this tight grip on my ideas of what death was and it kept unraveling. And so it was quite extraordinary.
Walking in the lanes of Varanasi is like walking in the spiritual memory of this country, actually. So are there any instances or any other place that you have been to which has triggered any instances or any place or any people whom you have met where there's a sense of spiritual experience that has happened to you?
So after studying in Rishikesh, I was like, I have to leave. And I went down to Haridwar because I felt more able to move, and especially to be near the sadhus. It was more sacred. 2017, not many people were going there at that time either, and has one of the most extraordinary artis that I mean, apart from obviously Varanasi. And so I walked and walked. I went to the temples. I went to Dakshina Kali across the way and across the bridge, and someone had taken me there, and at the time there was monkeys running around all over the place, and downstairs was the Vidya Temple, and then the 10 forms of Kali. Every single step that I took me closer and closer to many stories and density of my mind that I knew I had to release, that I had this control. Because even in the teacher training, when we were doing, looking at Patanjali Sutras, the second sutra, which is the Manas, Buddhi, Kara, and Chitta, I couldn't even separate those because my mind was so dense that I couldn't even separate those 4 aspects of the mind. Granted, there was, obviously it's in Sanskrit and Hindi, and obviously there's the translation. But even then it was very, very hard for me to literally claw away and allow these stories that I had identified with, which I hadn't really been aware of, because I considered myself quite spiritual, but guess what? I wasn't. I mean, that alone is quite egoic. And the beauty of being in India is there are so many gods. There is so much knowledge. There's 10 forms of Kali, 8 forms of Lakshmi. You can't even grasp that or have an ego around that because it just keeps unraveling. So I just kept soaking myself more and more in Haridwar, basically. I kept staying there, and then I was in Kamakya, so then I started going on these yantras alone. I started traveling India into all the feminine temples, into the Shakti Peeths, and I had a terrible idea also with the divine feminine. And it wasn't until I started working in that and being in these peeths too, and understanding, being around those energies, kind of things started unraveling more. So, and then there was Kumbh Mela.
What is interesting in India is that there is multiplicity, okay, in everything. And I've noticed that, under the same roof, there will be a skeptic and a devotee. There will be a scientist and a mystic. and we just live under the same roof, and we share a meal. And like you just said, there are many forms of goddess, there are many forms of uh, different forms of goddess. So that's the beauty of it. We celebrate that multiplicity, and there is something for every kind of mind here. So it's not linear. Yes. So that is the beauty of it, of this land, of this civilization. Because you can believe in God, even if you don't believe, it's fine. You're accepted, you're welcomed. Yeah.
Traveling also around, after I decided to leave on my own and start traveling up into the Himalayas, up into Badrinath and down, and I ended up going into the Mahapanchabuddha temples down in the south, and seeing the person who would make you the most amazing chai, and the 3 words that he would say to you would change your life. Like everywhere you turned, every person you spoke to here had this incredible energy or thread within them that to me made them such a big teacher to me. Like I was like, this is not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 gurus here. There is many. It's in the energy force of the people here. And it's not even like a book needs to be read, because the way of life in the Hinduism, that internal Sanat Dharma, how it is so lived in just every person, whether they're in a temple or have a certain god or goddess that they go to. But the philosophy, the way of life is just so rich.
Yes, and I think that's why we have the Kumbh Mela, where we celebrate that multiplicity.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So were you there at the last Kumbh Mela?
Last year, I had decided to go to Kumbh Mela, and I had gone in the Snan dates I had missed. And I was sitting there with a friend going, I don't even know where I'm going, because all the main Snan dates are gone. It's kind of winding up. But when you get there and you have this incredible amount of people going to this one point, going to that one point, and everyone's on that same state of consciousness. There's not, oh, I need to go do that, need to do this, need to do that, need to do that, da da da. It is surging towards this one energy, this one point in that collision of these great rivers, great mothers. And to be in that flow and to be in that energy was truly incredible. And also to be around the Nagasadhus and to see that. And I know, it's different for everybody. Everybody experiences different. But just to be in that sea and that rhythm and that flow, going to this one point was pretty powerful.
Powerful and also overwhelming for a lot of travelers there, isn't it? So, what the interesting thing about Kumbh Mela is that, in fact, in the last Kumbh Mela, I think we had about roughly 66 crore people coming in those 45 days. I think it's the largest human congregation on this, in the recorded history. So the fantastic thing about Kumbh is that, you see chaos, you see dust, you see movement everywhere, and you see just people chanting, loudspeakers, so much noise that every single thing that the modern wellness industry says that which should not be there for meditation, it is present in Kumbh Mela. And the fantastic thing about Kumbh Mela is that thousands of them go back home transformed, isn't it? Now, the rest of the world says that for a person to meditate, we need silent rooms, we need a posture, we need to withdraw from life. But in India, the framework of spirituality is very different. It begins with participation. And Kumbh Mela is that fantastic example, Because it is not just about faith. It works on your psyche. There are a couple of things about Kumbh Mela which is very interesting. See, before that, okay, when we see as Indians, we stand in long queues to go to a temple, isn't it? We walk for miles together to reach that a place of consecration. And in fact, we do the parikrama also, just dropping all our comfort. Very similar to that, in Kumbh Mela, we are just among those lakhs of people wherein our personal importance reduces. So, what it does is it drops our ego, or what we call ahankara, which is the first step that we need to take towards the spiritual path. So, unknowingly, we just become one among that crowd. So, it is not about, oh, my comfort, my life, my everything that's considered to be mine, that walls are shattered in Kumbh Mela. That's the beauty of it. Now, another aspect of the spiritual aspect that's about Kumbh Mela is that, see, when bhajans are done and there is mantras being chanted, unknowingly, our breathing pattern changes. So our mind shifts from attention to experience. And that itself grounds us. And when we become part of that crowd, when we accept that river to be sacred, that is believed to be sacred for thousands of years, then we become part of that living memory. We become, see, faith is not just about spirituality there, it works psychologically. Because today, in the modern world, we have a lot of mental health disorders. Why is we have anxiety? We see people every 1 in 5 having depression. Why is that so? Because we have built those walls around us. We have isolated ourselves. But when we are part of that Mela, there is a sense of belongingness. And there is no more isolation. So naturally, the first step towards healing is already taken as being part of this culture and civilization. So you didn't have to sit somewhere holding your nose doing pranayama, not required. You can just participate in that Mela, or you can just participate in whatever this culture asks you to do. That itself is healing. Yeah.
I think that the idea too of like you were of yoga, especially seen over in the many different paths you can go on with that. Obviously, exactly what you were talking about. Every time I climbed to a Durga Temple, or she wore you out because it was always a mountain to climb. There always were steps to climb. So by the time you got there, you were worn out and you literally were open, exactly what you were talking about. And it took many years to understand, why do I have to climb all these stairs? Or the environment. I remember going into Kamakia back in 2022, and it was very quiet because it was just after, I think, the opening of India again after that. And walking into that too, it's not about climbing up the stairs there, it was more the environment, the intoxication of seeing, just being within that womb of her, basically, including the outside. Ganesha, the tilak, just dripping from every single corner on the exterior of the temple. The lions, guarding her. And I looked around and I said, why does this seem so intense, but yet there's so much peace within this temple, but it was highly, highly charged in intensity. And I remember my friend who I was there with, Angela, and he's like, this is mother.
Yeah.
The intensity, the subtlety,
Absolutely.
everything existed in that moment in time when I was sitting on the stairs outside, just sitting outside of the temple.
Yeah.
And like you said, it breaks you down. It starts chipping away in the matrix. And they say, you don't go to Kamakya unless you're called. Like every single part of my journey within India has been almost like a matrix that has literally come together. And led me on a path and told me to be much more brave, to trust, to surrender, because I found with trust and surrender, then after that only exists love. But it was hard. It's hard
Yes.
because it's in and out all the time.
Yeah. No, in fact, like you, Rachel, many thousands of them have come to India.
Yeah.
And I feel that there have been invasions on India, but the greatest invasion, or one of the greatest invasion, has been by some authors in their footnotes. Yeah. So while we have person like John Woodruff, or who wrote in the name of Arthur Avalon, we also have James Mill, who never came to India but wrote extensively on India. Yes? So probably colonials just pioneered in remote writing even before Zoom existed. But what is interesting is when John Woodruff, he didn't see India or Tantra for that matter as just mysticism. He saw Tantra as a science of consciousness. And there have been many like him, like Ramdas or Radhanath Swamiji, or even David Frawley. Yes, Robert Svoboda. Yes.
Yeah.
All have come, and when they came to India, it was never about conversion. It was always about transformation. How well can you understand this unusual intelligence that this land holds? And how well can you ask questions, deeper questions, and stay in those questions long enough so that you can transform one day? That's all this land taught them. And their contribution to yoga is also phenomenal for that matter. Like Upanishads never asks us to believe or have faith. What Upanishads does is it asks us to inquire. So I think they got connected to this aspect of this civilization and culture, which gives them a lot of freedom to explore. Like you just said, you just enter a temple, nobody is stopping you. You just enter there, observe, absorb. But for us, it's a little different, because when we enter a space or when we think about this culture, it is not about acquiring something, it is just absorbing it. Yes, those samskaras are already inbuilt by default. So when people come to my yoga sessions, all I need to do if they're born in this land is just trigger that one particular aspect of them. So I just recognize, okay, what aspect of yoga would they connect to? Is it meditation? Is it Hatha Yoga? Is it like a karma yoga, or whatever aspect, or bhakti? I just have to recognize that, and I just have to press that button. And it's already there, it's already inbuilt. So that is where the difference comes, because that samskaras are already being built when you were born in this land. Another aspect, which I really want to know is, as an outsider, of course you have embraced Sanatana Dharma. Yes. What I would love to know is, what aspect of Indian wisdom do you think is most misunderstood by the rest of the world?
If you look at right from the beginning, from Rig Veda all the way through, to see the abundance of different entry points, whether Vastu, whether Upanishads, Yoga Sutra, wherever the entry point is, it's so vast as far as yoga. And I think when you're just taking one simple technique, such as asana, and really that is obviously making the body as comfortable as possible. And there's a whole other, but even when you just take one, look, when I read the Upanishads, which I didn't take lightly, but there was one particular sutra in there of Om, and what the meaning of that was. I literally dropped the book and was like, nicely, and said, oh my God, that what Om means, which is the past, present, future, unmanifested, manifested. You could sit with that beach sound for the rest of your life with that sutra. Yet India has this abundance. So for me, seeing this and also being appropriately dressed and representing yoga in the way that it is, because really it's just teaching us this way of life for our own unity in ways. But I would say yoga as in just asana. It really reduces it.
Rightly said.
Yeah.
Like when yoga is looked as sadhana here, it became a lifestyle outside. Our pranayama became breath work. Our dhyana became mindfulness. Our tapas became biohacking. Our Hatha Yoga became sound healing. So they have taken aspects of our culture, aspects of yoga, and I would not call it stolen, but just lifted from here and packaged it a little differently, renamed it. However, what they don't understand is that the essence of what yoga is can never be stolen, because this is a very secretive thing that I'm revealing to you. See, because in the world of yoga, the real essence of yoga still lies in the lineages, in the parampara. And lineage means context. It is not just gatekeeping, it is context. It is acknowledging the fact that there have been masters who have preserved that knowledge, who have practiced that knowledge, and who have shared that knowledge with absolute care. They are the real custodians of what yoga is. In fact, being in a particular lineage, I know, and also having a certain amount of knowledge about Tantra and various books on Tantra, I can tell you for sure that there are many, many practices which are absolutely powerful, which are not mentioned in any of the books, which still just flows in the lineage. And also, even if it is mentioned, it is so cryptic, and you need a guru, you need a teacher to make you understand that. So that's how the Indian masters were, Indian sages were. So it's all a Guhya Vidya, and because of that Guhya Vidya, how much ever the rest of the world tries to appropriate yoga, it will be a futile task at the end of the day. See, even to this day, we have like a social media. On social media, we have challenges, asana challenges, and fitness challenges, trends, and various 30 seconds of aesthetic posturing. What I like about that is it has made yoga visible. But what we need to also understand is that visibility is not understanding. So understanding yoga requires one to be in that lineage, one to make yoga as a sadhana. And I think as yoga practitioners, as yoga sadhakas, the greatest responsibility is to welcome participation of the rest of the world or in India. Along with that welcoming participation, we should preserve the depth of what yoga is. And I think, when you said yoga is beyond that asanas and pranayama, of course, asana prepares your body, pranayama regulates your breath, and dhyana transforms you. No two doubts about that. But when you said asana is like really misunderstood by the rest of the world, of course, yes, it's a fantastic thing that you have realized. And coming from you, it really, I'm really happy that you noticed that. And I hope that many more such practitioners in India and outside India see yoga beyond the asana. Of course, it's a great starting point, but it is not the be-all and end-all of yoga. Yes. And like with all the wellness trends that is there, yoga is not about comfort. You might have realized that, isn't it? Yoga is never about comfort. Yoga is a process to make you feel conscious. There is a sense of self-inquiry. And how can that process of self-inquiry make you feel comfortable? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's, you can, like you go into your yoga training, the next thing, put up videos and da-da-da-da. And that honeymoon period is just so beautiful and great. And if you're still working and you're still doing the practices, the honeymoon gets over pretty fast. And you start digging deeper, start getting forced into really uncomfortable situations, which is part of the evolution, which is part of the liberation, which is part of, gaining more and more, I don't want to say opportunities, but I remember standing on the side of the Ganga going, please give me a teacher that doesn't speak English. I don't want an English-speaking teacher. Because I didn't want to get into these stories. I don't want to see the same thing familiar over and over again. I want to experience. I want to really saturate myself and push myself. But you got to be careful what you ask for, because you certainly end up getting it.
In fact, when the colonials wrote about yoga and India, they said India is very backward as a nation, and yoga is all about tantra and tantric sex. And then there came a period where the modern writers made India into this mystical land and tantra into this mystical practice. And then we have the influencers now who say India is a vibe. Vibe. Yeah. But yes, it has stood the test of time. And I'm absolutely hopeful, but it will come what may. The core of yoga will still remain intact. Yes, because there are such lineages in this country who will uphold the values of yoga. And even when you, me, every one of us are gone, yoga will still survive the test of time.
I think even too with the mortis or the deities, and even looking and experiencing that, which became a huge part of my journey. And I mean, we were speaking about it the other day, is that idolizing. And I said, you can't look at this by idolizing these qualities of Saraswati or any of these beautiful gods and these experiences. There's a technology and science behind that, because you read like even the 10 great cosmic by the Dasha Mahavidyas, and you see heart surgeon, therapists, like people who are very scholarly doing these practices, writing different subjects about them. So that's what really interested me. And also once you started looking at some of those sadhanas, and it's all about energy. I mean, why do you go to the same restaurant? Why do you go to certain places? Because they have this energy, they have this quality. And it's the same as when you're in front of your mandir or your altar. There's a direct energy that's happening, and the qualities of who Saraswati is, or Durga, or who Lakshmi, or Kali, Ma Kali. But there's an invoking, there's an awakening within yourself that you're having this interesting relationship with. So yoga just isn't the asana in that way. But what absolutely fascinated me is when I started looking at some of the books on this, was the professors, the heart surgeons, all of this. That surprised me. But it made me feel safe too, because people were actually experiencing, who were operating or looking at people's minds, or they were engineer or whatever, that they also were getting great benefits from exploring this type of practice.
Yes, absolutely.
Fascinating.
So that also brings me to the point that, we always feel that you need to be cut off from life and be meditating up in the mountains. You don't need to do that in yoga. You can just be here wherever you are and still be an ascetic at heart. Yes? Whether you're an householder or whether you're an ascetic, it doesn't matter. Yoga just can embrace you wherever you are. Yeah. Yes. So what do you feel that, how do we take this yogic wisdom to the West? What is the best way to do it?
I think there has to be an acknowledgement, whether you're learning from a teacher or whether you see philosophy from some of the texts, that there is a recognition. And also, this was my experience with, say a sutra from the Upanishads, and then you can say, well, this is my experience, but it's calling out that this is what was invoking. So I think there needs to be a direct appreciation and an acknowledgement to who sent you on this experience, because everyone thinks that they came up with this great idea, and yet you look at it and you're like, actually that's in such and such a book, and that was, and I think there needs to be an acknowledgement, and also the expandedness of really looking at a lot of the ways. When I only, if I do any classes or studies, I only learn from someone from India. Yes. So I think there needs to be a direct appreciation, and also respect.
Like they say, you cannot learn about yoga or about Bharat through archives, anthropology, and through retreat brochures. So you need to really come to this land, be participative in this culture to really understand what yoga is, and not just for people coming to India, but for people living here as well. I think the greatest responsibility that I feel is to share and transmit the knowledge of yoga unalloyed to the next generation, because they're going to have a much more fast-paced, fragmented, noisy world. So it is up to us as to how we can share that knowledge to them so that they can take the maximum benefit of it, so that they reach that point of now. They are prepared for any kind of initiations when the time is right.
I want to thank you for a very meaningful session about your stint in India and yoga. My question is, have you explored Vedic astrology and your view on it?
Yes, back in 2018, I did my first training for Jyotish. I could not even comprehend on doing a reading for anyone still to this day, because the complexity of the upayas, the planets, the astral, but I found it to be one of the most incredible technologies. When I even read my own chart, so I'll speak from my point of view and my experience, it's almost like you can see through the antadashas, through the mahadashas, all the rest of it. You can almost see your life literally come alive. But at the same time, to even understand the relationship with the planets and how they actually affect, because you even look at the moon, like how can we not think that this is part of us, because the moon is completely guiding us all the time with the tides. So Jupiter, Shani, all of them. One example, which I will say, is soon I was born in a Shani Dasha. Thank God I had it then, because I think if I knew that I had it then, now I would have made all these different judgments on it. But as soon as I turned 16, my Dasha moved into Mercury. I immediately was found on the beach, flew into New York City, and became a model and was working with CoverGirl, Revlon, all the rest of it. And Mercury is that way. Things can change so fast. Obviously, with the planets, there's both high qualities and other, high, low qualities, depending on where you're at. But I truly, I just bow down to your country and all of you, because honestly, everything that you have here is just, I honestly, my soul just can't stop eating. It just keeps wanting to be fed by everything that you have here. So yes, I love Vedic astrology here, and I think, again, it's one of the most beautiful technologies too, when you look at it. Obviously, the teacher always said to me, you're never your chart, you can always change it, you change and evolve and change things. You don't have to get stuck. And that's the beauty, again, of India and the philosophy. It still gives me chills. You don't have to be anything. You can be everything. You just have to change your perception, your state of consciousness. It's that simple. So
Yes, I just want to add something to the astrology or Jyotish part of it. Today I see a lot of fear around Shani. We blame him for the dashas and everything. But I feel that Shani is the greatest teacher. He teaches us a lot of discipline and hard work. And what more do we need? And see, Jyoti means light. And Jyotish Shastra is a guiding light. So it will guide you according to your chart as to what are the dashas and what are the possible obstacles that you might encounter. Now, what we generally do is we start from a place of fear. Oh, what if this happens? Instead of that, I feel we need to prepare ourselves in such a way that we become more courageous, more empowered, so that we will be able to face those situations in life with ease. And for that, we have yoga, we have pranayama, we have dhyana, all these are tools given to us to empower us so that we can, in a way, not just change our destiny, but when life throws challenges at us, we are already prepared. Like sage Patanjali says, Heyam dukkham anagatam. the suffering that is yet to come, let's work on that today. So we have that opportunity through the practice of yoga, wherein we can actually make us reduce that suffering, or that suffering might not even come with the practice of yoga. Yeah.
It's very true. I mean, I personally love the shani because it is just, it puts you right on that track, and your sense of purpose, your sense, and it keeps going, no, oh, you're veering off here, no, back on here. So the journey's, yeah, it's beautiful.